Hi.
Hello.
I love it when technology works. It's very exciting.
Knock on
Welcome,
wood.
everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So excited to be here today. My name is Alia Khan. I work at Marriott International. I work in design. I lead design for the lifestyle brands. And I'm thrilled to be here today with Jeff David. I sort of call him my newfound best friend because we spent a fair amount of time talking to each other over the last week, and I can't wait for conversations to continue. So, welcome, Jeff. Why don't you introduce yourself? Because I think you'll do a better job than I will.
Well,
Tell us all about you.
yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for everyone listening in. I'm Jeff David. I'm currently the actually outgoing president of Fitler Club. I'll discuss my next venture towards the end of this. But basically, I'm here to talk about reinvention, a little bit background about my life, and I hate talking about my life, but I guess it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
My
it's
face
interesting.
is my
It's
face front.
definitely.
Looks like I'm in deep thought. But anyway, yeah, I started. My parents immigrated here from the Philippines. I'm first generation American, growing up in North Jersey. And as a typical 17, 18-year-old, I didn't know what to do with my life. And with a traditional Filipino family, I thought I was going to be a priest. So I was
Love it.
teeter-totter between the, the seminary. I had decent grades, decent SATs, so I had a couple of academic scholarships. And then I had this weird talent of knowing how to paint portraits and sculpture, the human figures. So talk about confusing. I didn't know what it is. Eventually, art won. I wanted
Yeah.
to go to LA like every kid's dream, and I wanted to animate for Disney, which is not many other people's dreams. Trying to apply it to there. So while I was at UCLA, a movie, I'll date myself, there was a movie Pretty Woman that came out, and there was this hotel, Regent Beverly Wilshire. And
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, there was no Ladders or Monster.com. It was like the Sunday newspaper, and I'd circle the classified ads. And there was a dishwasher, and possibly a bar back position, and I applied for it. That was 1993, and that was a Four Seasons hotel. Um, I left 10 years later. I did 9 years at Four Seasons, both to Beverly Wilshire and Boston. And then in 10 years, I went from dishwasher to GM. So I'm kind of like an artist where I guess I have did like Picasso had his blue periods and his cubism periods. I had four periods in my life. I had the traditional luxury corporate Four Seasons. That's 9 years. And then I went into 6 years with the upstart of Viceroy Hotel Groups.
Uh-huh.
And I started doing the lifestyle brands, and started opening notables like Anguilla, Aspen Snowmass. I did a little stint at Palm Springs, and everything like that. And then I had about 4 years of my life doing independence. So I went from corporate luxury to lifestyle boutique to independence. And my notable independent brands were I opened a Knickerbocker in Times Square. I
Mm-hmm.
reopened the Watergate that was closed in '08 when it was a Lehman disaster, and we reopened it in '16. I was a partner in a small little hotel in Nantucket called Graydon House. So that was my first foray into that space. And in the last 5 years, I was a consultant, and a lot of people think, and especially in hospitality, consultant means in between jobs. I researched, saved 6 months of salary. I did everything YouTube told me to do, and I read like basically save some money, get some anchor clients, and then and purge. And then I started exploring because I think I was sick of being a hotelier. I think I reached the proverbial mountaintop, and I hated the view.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was gallivanting all around, and if there's any luxury hoteliers, no offense, because everyone's posting congratulations on our 10th year, fifth star, and travel award winner, and I didn't like that. I started getting mentored by founders, actually in DC, where you
Mm.
are. Um,
Nice.
I was fascinated by their humility. I was fascinated how much they were curious about you, and they didn't want to talk about themselves, and
Right.
they their minds different. So I started my own company of helping startups in hospitality. And I was picking up private aviation companies. I was picking up sustainable marine boat living. I was picking up private clubs like Fitler. I was
Yeah.
launching the Prop brand in Santa Monica, which is still traditional, but still pretty different with its Ayurvedic spa and everything like that. So that's where I am now.
So,
And
I think the thing that I'm always curious about, and this is a little bit like I hear it on my side of the spectrum. I see a lot of young talent today who right out of the gates is like, I'm not doing the traditional. I'm not doing the traditional. I'm not interested in the traditional. I only want to do independently spirited things. And, I've sort of gone from one extreme to another extreme, back to another extreme. I do believe, though, that there's a lot of stuff that you had to have learned in the traditional hospitality world, that has stayed with you, and maybe you've evolved it, or it's become, it's grown into a different part of your personal ethos. But are there things that you learned from that earlier time frame that you kind of look back on and you've either pushed and evolved, or is still with you, like the human part, the actually connecting with people part? Like, I find that's the core crux of traditional hospitality. And some days we get so caught up in how does it look and how does it taste and how does it feel that we forget why anybody comes in the first place, because you connect with them as humans. Like, are there things like that or other things that you've drawn from
oh
your
yeah,
past?
um, you can't replace wisdom, right? And
Yeah, true.
I thing that Four Seasons taught me was corporate discipline.
Mm,
So at Four Seasons Boston, we wanted to be the first 5-star, 5 diamond in New England area, and there was an obsession on service. Right now, there's an obsession on technology,
yeah,
whatever, crypto, cannabis, whatever the obsession is now.
right.
It's there, but everything's frictionless now, which is basically from your phone. And I call it like Beyonce. Like Beyonce doesn't think about her travel plan; someone does think it, and that's what's happening. Is I think they call it digital dementia. Like back in the day, you had to memorize phone numbers and stuff like that. So I think the wisdom, and I'm a Gen Xer. I think the wisdom of taking your blows, going up the corporate ladder, and I remember in Four Seasons, I used to know how to polish my wingtip shoes on the back of my calves, because before a morning lineup, we'd see how our shoes shine. All the way to now, where you're dealing with VCs now and everything like that. So it's kind of good full circle gamut of exposure and discovery. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I like the component of the full circle, and I think, in order for you to do one thing well, you do kind of have to understand and be aware of like the presentation, the people component, the discipline, where does the money come from? Even if you're not the person dealing with the money, like building the whole picture. I can't stress it enough to anyone who's in my orbit that, learn the whole picture, understand how to walk before you start to run. um, Getting into running, and I am sort of running into the next thing. I think the thing that I'm so interested in, and I'm sure people listening are, is, you reimagined things, and reinvention is certainly one way of putting it. But I think in order for you to actually reinvent, you have to rethink and reimagine first. And you and I have talked about our mutual hate of the word pivot. I can't stand that word. I can't stand
I
that
don't
word
like. I
almost
don't
as much as I
like the
can't
word
stand
pivot.
the word curated. But you've kind of done these different things, and a lot of it is alternate product, right? The houseboats, the private aviation. Like, tell us a little bit about that journey. So, hospitality chapter one done. What happened next?
Yeah, I think going into my own business in 2017 made you think, I don't have a bonus. I don't have PTO. I went into like my own S corp, it's called, but basically, I had to get my own insurance and everything like that. So it was a little bit of fight or flight. And definitely, you get a network that people refer you or seek you out or anything like that. and it just happy little coincidences just happened to spread through. So yeah, I guess pivot was it's such a common word now because of COVID and all these circumstantial changes that you got to reinvent yourself. So I maybe I had a crystal ball, but I pivoted my life and pivoted my business product. I became my own boss, and it was definitely it wasn't easy. As glamorous as I could write it and market it, but it wasn't easy. But it was definitely, it's still a fun ride.
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of that is also understanding and acknowledging that you have to get a little bit comfortable with failure. And, I use failure in a general sense. Like, we all start things, right? We embark on things, and you get halfway through, you're like, well, that's not going as planned. And instead of sort of giving up and saying, I'm out, like, what do you learn from that? And how do you sort of start to take that and maybe use that as the lens or the filter to what you do next? I mean, I fell into hospitality by absolute accident, and it's a different story for a different time. But
you didn't wash dishes, student.
I was an architecture student, right?
Yeah.
And I had a real job somewhere else doing something that I didn't like. And somebody said, you know what, why don't you come work with me for 3 months and I'll help you figure this out? And it became my entry into hotels. But I remember walking away from that job and thinking, like, oh my God, I'm such a loser. Like, why do I not like this? Everybody in the world wants to work for this company and I don't. And, it's me, it's not them. And I think along the way, I got comfortable with, well, I don't have to do everything that everyone else does. And you certainly are not doing things that everyone else does. And, how do you kind of, how do you get comfortable with that? Or how do you know? Is it like a gut thing, or what's your, talk us through a little bit of that.
Obsessed with entrepreneurship and the DNA of founders. So basically, I think in entrepreneurship, I think that motto is fail, 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 and then succeed. Mm-hmm. So you're almost paid to problem solve and research, but it doesn't work. So that unpredictability was definitely something that tickled my fancy, but also like it is hard. So I listened to a great talk with one of these VC founders, Josh Koppelman from First Round here. And someone asked him, basically First Round Capital right here in Philly, there were some seed capital to, I don't know, you heard of these companies like Uber, Square, Ring Doorbell. So yeah, so they said, well, almost like a gambler, how do you know a good founder with a bad? Because you're basically betting on a future. And he said something that really resonated with me, which reflects my style, and anyone on this podcast that's worked with me. He says, do you ever hear the story of the chicken and the pig eating breakfast? And everyone says no. And he said, well, the difference between a chicken and a pig making breakfast is the pig is fully vested. Yeah. So basically the chicken could donate its eggs. That's how I felt about the hotel business was I'm just lending my expertise, but I'm a cog in a wheel. Be asset manager and owner and operation staff, profit, loss, et cetera, where the pig is fully vested. He's getting slaughtered for the bacon or the ham or the sausage. And it was like, basically that's how I developed properties was don't get me for my intellect, get me for, I'm going to be so vested in this and curious and problem solve that if I'm trying to solve parking, I'm going to sit in the garage. And it's the proverbial, when I started Fitler, I started, as I said it again, as a dishwasher. Now I'm a president. And when I started Fitler, I started back as a dishwasher. I just wanted to see how the flow goes in the kitchen and everything like that. So you have to wipe your slate, be really humble, and just be really curious how things work. And don't assume anything. You know?
I think there's definitely something to be said for getting back with people and figuring, sort of getting off your perch and getting into rolling up your sleeves and into the thick of it. I think COVID has definitely taught a lot of us, or reminded us, a lot of us, of that. I spent a little bit of time like literally going into drawing sets and redlining documents and writing standards. I haven't done that in decades. But it created this newfound awareness for me of like what everybody around me has to do. And I'm like, oh, well, this is not always fun or easy. Or what if we maybe tried to fix the process this way? And I'm sure you had a little bit of that also, right? I mean, Fitler, you from a timing perspective, you joined Fitler right around the time of the pandemic starting,
Yeah.
right? Oh, fun time to start a new opportunity.
I ended launching Proper Santa Monica in January. February, I took a sabbatical to St. Bart's. That's not a humble brag. I'm a Caribbean guy, and I love the Caribbean. I came back, I think February 28th I started, and March 15th we closed. Or February, in February. And then I was just getting to know the staff, just getting to know the members. And my first all-staff meeting was, I think I'm going to have to lay you all off. And every 4 hours, thing that's happening in Wuhan, China, and blah, 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 all the terms we used back in 2020, which was like 15 years ago, it feels like. Right. I did that. And my first meeting with the board, other than the selection and interview process, was, well, I have an idea. I don't know them. And I basically said, well, we have access to food because it was essential.
Right.
And I made some calculations if we absorb everyone's healthcare. And for the next 100 days, and we just kept week by week, we set up this online marketplace. We gave everyone $100 allowance, and anyone who works in purchasing or food, $100 is like $300 in allowance. Yeah. And we basically delivered, and they picked up. We converted our whole ballroom into this sort of BJ's Amazon workplace, and I laid off, I don't know, we had 280 staff at the time. I laid off 250. But we fed them. We kept in touch with them. We kept them posted on things to come, and there was nothing to post because we were all glued to the TV. Right. So when the board says emphatically yes, and I gave them the calculations, that's when I knew I was in the right place. And I think that's kind of where and I just been through so many crises in my life, like country music, like. I guess like you can't write beautiful music unless your heart's broken, I guess, and it's the same. And so I've been through so much crisis. In Anguilla, I went through 2 Category 5s and a Category 4. On my wedding day in 2001 in Nevis, Montserrat blew up. So we were stuck on an island as it was snowing ash. In 2018, I was in Santa Monica launching something. Our rooftop pool leaked 6 floors down while there was Malibu fires. So there was so much. Even in Beverly Wilshire, I was part of the Northridge earthquake. So the crisis, the scar tissue makes you wiser. Yeah. And it trusts the human spirit rather than the insurance claims and the remediation, yada yada, which is also part of my job.
You also find that your threshold for shock goes up, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, I was going to say, but on the other hand, like then you're surrounded by people who, haven't had those life experiences. And it's like, how do you sort of bring yourself back to, imagining where they are in their heads and helping them overcome whatever that anxiety is, because, you're so immune to it yourself because you've been through it so many times.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have the empathy, I guess.
The people connection. So speaking of people, to our audience, if anybody has questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat feature at any time, and we'll then see how technologically savvy I am and if I actually know how to retrieve them. But that aside, I think let's go back to people. And, when you in the earlier part of this conversation, and even when you and I spoke before, when you were talking about this idea of the part artist, the part priest, this idea of connecting with humans, and you've even talked about how you always would rather be the person behind sort of there for everyone than the person up front. You are known for your handbooks. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy and your approach, but also the handbooks. Talk about the handbooks.
I think it was an evil master plan of just influencing people. I think it's on my website, I think, but I think when we were opening the Knickerbocker Hotel, I challenged myself that we were going to hire 300 staff and oh my God, Siri's just, you hear Siri? She's like
I
listening to
hear
me.
Siri. She pops up once every so often. She's done this before.
Yeah. So basically, I had an opportunity to start from scratch. It was a blank canvas. I was coming from Four Seasons and Viceroy, and it's like, Jeff, here is your first blank canvas. We are Highgate, right? We're on 42nd and Broadway. Highgate just had one or two lifestyle hotels at the time, so it was basically infancy of the Highgate lifestyle brand, and just go at it, you know? So I said, oh my gosh, I could do it. So I took my art and basically published a book. I took my philosophy, whether it's spiritual or leadership or inspirational, whatever you, and I basically said, 42nd and Broadway is the crossroads of the world. That's its nickname. It's got 60 million pedestrians. It's the busiest crossroad ever. And that's essentially also almost the epicenter of Manhattan proper. So it's right in the middle. If you take like Wall Street to like the top of Central Park, Times Square's in the middle. So I took that profound like history and I said, we have a mission. And then I just said, it's basically about being good. You know, it was virtuous. I just said what I hate, and it's not just the word pivot, but I hate ego. I hate, so I just said, there's a difference between virtue and vice, and being virtuous is being selfless, and having a vice is having ego. And we use that as our basis of mission. And it was if anyone from the Knickerbockers here, it was probably the most profound opening experiences I had. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's an iconic property and no joke. Like as you were describing it, I could imagine it in my head. There was like a Gap store underneath, and you literally had the most that terrace, the most spectacular view. You were immersed in Times Square. It was so rich.
Yeah, like 150 feet from the ball drop. So that Times Square ball has the highest viewership. That's 2 billion people internationally, and we were across the street from it.
Yeah, so. And you know, even the fact that it's like the fact that, you know, it's New York and the diversity of people, the experiences, all of that I think is so interesting because you get to work with different types of people.
Yeah. I see some questions here.
Oh, do you see them? I don't. Do you want to read them out?
Yeah.
Go for it, because I'm
all
like,
right. I'll skip to the second question. How much of your success you owe it to your faith, and what do you learn in your religious teaching?
Oh, good question.
First of all, I'm not pounding people with a Bible, even though I'm like traditional Filipino Catholic. I think religion, science, psychology, kind of there's a convergence there. That's a big word. And I think whether it's Tao or Jesus or Muhammad, everything's just basically love thy neighbor, and basically we're here and it's humility. And I think that's kind of that underlying tone is that, but there is nothing, I would say, spiritual that's evidential, right? HR would hate that. Sorry, HR people who are there, but it is basically people want inspiration, and people want universal language, like, you know, taking care of each other before we take care of the guest is like universal inspiration, right? So that's how I used it. So I hope like that answers. My religious teachings now in 2022 is a lot of YouTube, but I love history too, and I love it. So, yeah. So
I also think it's like foundational to a value system, right? And whether you choose to continue to embrace, adopt, and demonstrate, or evolve it, like it all starts somewhere, right? So
yeah,
I get that. I think it was a good question. And we
Yeah.
have another one, I think, as well. Sorry, I should know where the chat is. I don't. I
Yeah.
told you I would deliver on one technological foul. So here it is.
Wow. Someone's like,
Oh,
this is
here
not.
we go.
Hi, Amy. I work with Jeff Woody, Open Viceroy's inspiration. It was with me this day. Oh, I don't want to read this one. He walked the talk, and you know, there was 100 people that sobbed. He's a kind and inspirational. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, I think getting back to some of the questions. Yeah, I just think that it's human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I think also it's starting to come through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're into tech, the worst thing that could happen is M&A, mergers and acquisitions, which means your unicorn that you thought didn't work, and someone has to buy all this seed round for you at like pennies to the dollar. One of my mentors, he was one of the founders. His name is Scott Case, out of Washington, D.C. He's one of the founders of Priceline.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
He raised about $200 million in 4 years research for this business travel website, online marketplace for business travel, and it just died with the pandemic. So when I hear him as my mentor, not caring about anything but the taking care of his staff that was with him, I said, that's why you're my mentor, because when someone could like take care of your staff rather than the ownership or the public REIT or even like your public reputation, I think that's kind of where things are. And I think that's kind of like my little plan is that's my secret power is you treat people with kindness and you know, you call it karma, you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah, I love
I have
that.
one more
And
question because I see it's 27
so
minutes.
I was going to say we have 3 minutes. I saw that last question come up, and it's a nice dovetail into what we were going to talk about. You know, tell us about your new opportunity. I mean, you know, you have
I mean, you can see my new title.
Something cooking.
Yeah, so my new title is the president of Align Hospitality, and that's still in development now. If you look at the Indie site, there's like a shameless plug. Basically, I'm joining this big movement right now of flexible living, and it's basically this convergence, co-working, health and wellness, community and purpose, and short-term rentals. So whether that the short-term rentals is Irby, the Guild, you know, Sonder, like Central, like X Living, that plus luxury residences, so long-term, short-term living, and all that community into one. And I think I'm going to be leading that, and I'll have an equity stake in the company. It's going to be a great tech platform, and I think that's where the future is.
What is the most
about, you know? But that's where I'm joining, and I'm transitioning out of Fitler, and I just told the staff this week, so it's been a tough week.
What are you most excited about in your new opportunity, or is that a yet to be discovered thing?
What am I most excited? I don't know. I think it's the curiosity. I think it's also having some equity and having people like Adam Newman from WeWork is going to be our competitor. He's doing the exact same thing, and just this kind of arena of creation and following the trends of short-term rentals and all the celebrated flexible livings all integrated, and that I think that's a huge byproduct from pandemic. Everyone like yourself, digital nomad, some AirPods and a laptop, and work from anywhere. So
I'm definitely liking this flexible life. I mean, I'm not flexible in this moment. I'm actually in my dining room, but when I'm not, you know, there's something to it. And I think going back to what we said earlier, the idea of where there's adversity, find the new opportunity and make it sane.
Yeah.
We have a few seconds left. Any more? Actually, you know what? I'm sure people will write questions, but if you were to go back and talk to the artist with good grades, how would you inspire him today?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that may take more than a minute, but you know.
of Mary J. Blige, "No More Drama." I think
Oh,
when you get caught up, when you wear your emotions in your sleeve, you could see that there's a lot of drama in hospitality.
mhm.
If you're stoic, which means you have a purpose-driven life and you're like impervious to like these little gossipy dramas that happen every day in hospitality, they do it. But yeah, I became a stoic in my own way, which is just I might be passionate, but I also are driven by purpose. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The gossip by the
yeah.
water cooler. It's like stay away from that stuff, young. And I'd also tell my young self to invest in Apple and Amazon early.
Mm.
Just kidding.
Sensible,
If I had
sensible
time,
advice.
of course.
Sensible.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I
um,
love that. We are at time, so thank you. It was nice to actually hang out with you. I look forward to an in-person hangout at some point. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and till next time.
all right. Till next time. Anyone could DM me on LinkedIn too if you have a question unanswered. Be happy to
Excellent.
answer.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.